This is the Release and Realization podcast, where we explore emotional freedom and practical manifestation based on the teachings of Lester Levenson and Neville Goddard to help you unlock your inner power and create the life you want. Welcome. In today's episode, David and Anna explore soul desire versus conditioned desire and where the true inner calling really comes from.
Welcome to this deep dive. Today we're exploring a fundamental aspect of the human experience. We are looking at the true nature of desire.
It is a profound topic.
It really is. And we're going to frame this conversation quite differently than you might expect. We aren't going to focus on the objects we chase. Instead, we're going to focus on the internal state of consciousness, the specific state from which those desires actually emerge.
Right. It's a critical distinction to make. Our mission today is to help you map your own internal landscape of desire. We want to help you distinguish between entirely different states of wanting.
Because they can look so similar from the outside.
Exactly. More importantly, we'll explore how to use your body's physical responses as a highly tuned compass. You can use this compass for authenticity. You can learn to read these physical signals with remarkable precision.
I think we need to set a foundational premise before we get too far in. It's the simple idea that two desires can look completely identical from the outside.
They absolutely can.
They might point toward the exact same house. They might point toward the exact same relationship, or even the same career milestone. To an outside observer, there's absolutely no difference. But the foundation beneath those two desires can be worlds apart.
I have found in my own work that creation responds in a very specific way. It's almost mechanical. The way reality responds to us is entirely dependent on the state of consciousness behind the desire.
So it's not about the words we use.
No, not at all. Reality doesn't react to the specific wording of your goal. It doesn't react to the vision board you create, or the highly detailed spreadsheet you build to track your progress. It reacts exclusively to the state of being that is generating the request.
I'm going to pause on that.
Yeah.
Because I think it's very easy to get caught up in the mechanics of goal setting.
It's the default mode for most of us.
Right. People spend hours crafting the perfect affirmations, or they spend days writing out their 5-year plans. What does this idea actually mean for the listener who's doing all that external work?
It means that the surface-level goal is largely irrelevant if the underlying state is misaligned. You can use the most perfectly constructed affirmations. You can take all the right external actions. You can wake up at dawn and check every box on your productivity list.
But still might not work.
Exactly. If the state of consciousness driving that action is hollow, the result will inevitably reflect that emptiness. Reality is reading your internal state. It is never just reading your external words.
So the universe acts as a mirror of states, rather than a mirror of vocabulary.
And that is a perfect way to put it.
That explains a lot, actually. It explains why two people can desire the exact same objective, and one achieves it with this effortless grace, while the other struggles endlessly. The difference is never the object itself. The difference is the originating state of consciousness.
Precisely. And to truly understand this, it is highly useful to divide these states into 3 distinct categories. Once you understand these categories, you can begin to audit your own life.
So if we're categorizing these states, let's look at the first one. We refer to this as conditioned desire.
Yes, the state of imitation.
Right. This is a state shaped entirely by what you've seen in the world around you. It's shaped by what you learned from your family. It is built on the values you've internalized from your culture, your peers, and the media.
Conditioned desire is perhaps the most common state we operate from in modern society. It functions almost entirely through imitation.
Because we are social creatures.
We are. It operates on deeply internalized scripts. You hear phrases throughout your life, and over time, you silently adopt them as your own.
Scripts like, this specific career path is considered valuable.
Yes, or this type of neighborhood counts as true success. Or even something subtle like, this is the right trajectory for someone with my educational background.
You simply adopt the goal without questioning its origin. You look at what society praises, and you quietly decide to want that thing. You see your peers striving for a specific type of promotion. You absorb the ambient idea that this promotion is the ultimate measure of professional worth. So you begin to desire it too. You adopt the hunger.
We need to be very clear on one point regarding the state. This type of desire isn't inherently malicious.
It's not a bad thing.
No.
Huh.
It's not necessarily false in a destructive or toxic way, but it lacks a genuine internal source. It is an adopted goal rather than a born one. Think of it as a graft placed onto your life from the outside. Because it lacks roots in your true core identity, it requires constant external validation to stay alive.
You have to keep feeding it with other people's approval.
You do.
If society suddenly stopped valuing that specific corporate title or that specific luxury car, your desire for it would likely evaporate overnight. That's the hallmark of a conditioned desire. It depends entirely on the environment that created it,
I want to look at the physical reality of this state. We can examine the somatic marker.
which is simply how the body physically responds to the thought of the desire.
Right. In a state of conditioned desire, the body feels slightly adaptive. It feels as if it is actively trying to align itself to an external mold.
I love this concept of the somatic marker. It's a fascinating physical sensation to observe in yourself. It isn't necessarily a feeling of intense, crushing stress. It is much more subtle than that. I often compare it to the feeling of wearing a perfectly tailored suit that
Actually belongs to someone else.
Exactly. The fabric might be incredibly expensive, the cut might be sharp, you might look fantastic in the mirror, but deep down in your bones, that it isn't yours.
That's a highly accurate metaphor. You can move around in that suit. You can present exceptionally well to the world. You can even attend the gala and receive compliments, but you do not feel deeply at home in it.
Your body knows it's playing a role.
It does. There is a persistent low-grade exhaustion that accompanies conditioned desire. You are constantly spending your own energetic capital. You spend it to maintain a posture that isn't natural to your physical and psychological frame.
Let's expand on that exhaustion, because I think it's a profound trap. You might spend a decade pursuing a conditioned desire. Let's say you spend 10 years climbing the corporate ladder to become a vice president.
A very common scenario.
You sacrifice your weekends. You adopt the mannerisms of the executives above you. You finally get the promotion. You get the corner office. And then you sit in the chair. And you experience a profound, confusing sense of emptiness. The suit fits, but you're still just you underneath it. The external object didn't magically alter your internal state.
That hollow feeling of achievement is the ultimate proof of a conditioned desire. You reach the finish line of a marathon you never actually wanted to run. Your body was adapting the entire time. It was conforming to the shape of the container.
It was never expressing its true nature.
Exactly. It was simply surviving the mold.
So if conditioned desire is just us playing dress-up with society's expectations, what happens when the wanting comes from a darker, more urgent place? That brings us to the second state. This is lack-based desire.
The state of searching.
Yes. This state originates from a fundamental, deep-seated internal tension. It comes from the deeply held belief that there simply isn't enough. The internal monologue is very clear and very loud here. It says, I need this. It says, there is an emptiness inside me that has to be filled by this specific thing.
This is a significantly more intense state than conditioned desire. Conditioned desire is primarily about social imitation. Lack-based desire is about perceived survival.
It feels like life or death.
It really does. I often look to the framework of Levenson to explain this state with the depth it requires. Levenson was a philosopher who precisely described the nervous system constriction, the physical tightness that accompanies this specific type of wanting.
I want to pause on that urgency piece, because I think anyone listening can immediately relate to that frantic feeling, that feeling of, I just need this one thing to happen and then I'll finally be happy, then I'll be safe. Is that constriction literally our body treating a missing promotion or a missing relationship like a physical threat?
It is entirely a threat response. Levenson observed something fascinating. When we want something from a place of deep lack, our nervous system doesn't differentiate between emotional emptiness and physical danger.
So the body reacts the same way it would to a predator.
Yes. Our body treats the absence of the desired object as a literal threat to our survival. The nervous system actually constricts. It prepares for impact. The desire becomes deeply intertwined with a feeling of fundamental unsafety.
That explains so much about why this state feels so terrible to be in. The mechanism of action here is very specific. Lack-based desire carries a distinct, heavy energy. It's characterized by an overwhelming sense of urgency.
There's a palpable forward-leaning energy to it.
It involves intense mental striving. The mind simply cannot rest. The desire here is constantly searching the horizon for a solution to the internal pain.
You feel like you are always one step behind your own life. You are constantly reaching for something just out of your grasp. You operate under the strict belief that once you secure the object of your desire, the internal tension will finally cease.
You place the entire burden of your emotional regulation on a future event, an event that hasn't happened yet.
Which is an impossible burden for any goal to carry.
We need to emphasize a crucial distinction at this point. The object being desired in this state isn't necessarily wrong or bad. You might be desiring a loving partnership. A loving partnership is a beautiful, natural human experience.
It is.
The issue isn't the partnership itself. The issue is that the originating state of consciousness is experiencing profound starvation.
Exactly. You are approaching a perfectly healthy desire from a highly unhealthy frequency. You are bringing a state of emotional starvation to a banquet. When you do that, the energy you project into the world is grasping, it is heavy, it feels demanding to those around you.
And people feel that.
They do. Reality responds to the state of lack by simply mirroring more lack back to you. The very urgency of your pursuit often repels the object further away.
It's the classic dating paradox. When you are absolutely desperate for a relationship, people subconsciously sense that heavy, grasping energy, and they pull away. But when you are entirely comfortable on your own, suddenly everyone wants to date you. It is the mirrored reflection of your state.
Let's walk through the physical reality of this. The somatic marker of lack-based desire is undeniable once you learn to identify it. There is microtension located throughout the body.
You can feel it in your muscles.
Yes, there is a subtle internal grasping. You can actually feel a slight internal leaning forward. It is as if your physical body is trying to rush ahead of the present moment. It wants to get to the safety of the future.
Your breathing changes completely. Noticeably shallower breathing is a primary indicator. You aren't taking full, expansive breaths into your belly. You are breathing high and tight in the chest. Your jaw might be clenched. Your shoulders often creep up toward your ears.
Think about how you feel when you are staring at your laptop. You are desperately waiting for an important email to arrive. You are hunched. You are tight. Your physical vessel is quite literally bracing for impact.
This bracing is the body's deeply misguided attempt to protect you. It's trying to protect you from the perceived threat of not getting what you need. But this very constriction prevents you from entering a state of receptivity.
That is the tragedy of it.
You simply cannot receive what you are desperately clinging to. A closed, tight fist cannot accept a gift. It physically bounces off.
This brings us to a really beautiful pivot point in our deep dive. We are introducing the third and final state. This is soul desire.
It is also frequently referred to as identity-based desire or state-based desire.
Yes, and we have to contrast this immediately with the previous two states we've discussed. It does not arise from lack, it isn't a survival mechanism, and it certainly doesn't arise from imitation or social conditioning.
Soul desire arises purely from recognition. This represents a profound shift in consciousness. It changes the entire internal monologue. The voice inside your head no longer says, "I desperately need this to be whole." Instead, it says, "This is me."
It says, "This fits."
It simply says, "This feels like home."
It is an absolute departure from the frenetic energy of searching. When you experience soul desire, you aren't hunting for a missing piece of your puzzle. You are simply recognizing a reflection of your own internal state in the external world.
You are encountering a frequency in the physical world that perfectly matches a frequency that already exists in your internal world.
I often describe this specific state of consciousness as resonant. It isn't searching. Resonance requires absolutely no effort. Think of two tuning forks in a quiet room. When you strike one tuning fork, the other one across the room begins to vibrate. It vibrates simply because they are tuned to the exact same pitch.
Soul desire operates on this exact physical principle.
It does. It has no need to pull. It has no need to push. It never rushes.
Wait, I want to challenge that idea for a moment.
Yeah.
Because I think it's a common sticking point for people. If soul desire requires no pushing or pulling, doesn't that just make us entirely passive? How do we actually achieve anything, or build a career, or start a family, if we're just resting in a state of resonance and not actively striving?
That is a vital question. Resonance is not passivity. In fact, it is highly active. But it lacks friction. When you operate from resonance, the actions you take are inspired, they are fluid, and they are sustainable. You still work, you still build, but you aren't grinding your gears.
You aren't forcing it.
You aren't forcing the outcome out of fear. You move toward the goal because it is a natural extension of who you are, not because you are terrified of what will happen if you fail. The action is joyous, not desperate.
That makes perfect sense. The action feels deeply familiar. Even if you are stepping into a role you've never physically experienced before, the idea of it feels like a memory. You are remembering a state of being that already exists within your potential.
You aren't striving to become something entirely new and alien.
You are relaxing into what you inherently already are.
We must look at the somatic marker for identity-based desire. because it is the ultimate litmus test. The physical experience is the polar opposite of the lack-based state. The body completely drops its defenses. There is no need to protect against a threat, because there is no perceived lack in the environment.
Your breath naturally expands. You can feel the air moving deep into your diaphragm, rather than getting stuck in your throat. Your chest feels genuinely more open. The inner space inside your body feels incredibly stable and secure.
You are grounded in the present moment.
You aren't subconsciously leaning forward into the future anymore. You are resting exactly where your feet are planted.
This physical state introduces a highly important concept. We call it nervous system coherence. Coherence is a state where the heart, the mind, and the emotions are in perfect energetic alignment.
They're all speaking the same language.
Yes. I have found over years of observation that this coherence is one of the most precise indicators of pure authenticity. When a desire is authentic to your core self, your nervous system responds with profound harmony, rather than panic or constriction.
Let me make sure I understand this from a practical standpoint. What does coherence actually feel like when I'm sitting at my desk trying to make a major life decision? If I am debating taking a new job across the country, how do I measure coherence in my body?
You measure it by observing the expansion or contraction of your physical space. Consciousness doesn't inherently choose what is simply new in a linear sense. It doesn't just want novelty for the sake of chaotic novelty. Rather, consciousness chooses coherence.
It wants to recognize itself.
Exactly. It seeks out and selects patterns that are aligned with a deeper, self-consistent state of being. If thinking about that new job makes your chest tighten and your breath go shallow, you lack coherence. If it makes you sit back in your chair, breathe deeply, and feel a quiet sense of rightness, you have coherence.
That is incredibly helpful. Your deeper self wants to experience its own coherence in the physical world. Therefore, an authentic desire doesn't require you to physically or mentally contract in order to hold it.
It never asks you to shrink.
If you have to shrink yourself, or tense up your muscles,
Yeah.
or force your mind into anxious knots to maintain your focus on a goal, it simply isn't a soul desire. It is likely a conditioned or lack-based goal disguised as ambition.
A true desire always feels expansive. It allows you to take up more space in the world, not less. It is a gentle unfolding of your potential. It is never a violent conquest of your environment. When you find a desire that allows your nervous system to remain completely coherent and calm under pressure, you have found a compass pointing directly toward your true path.
So let's expand on the quiet nature of this recognition-based desire, because it completely changes how we interact with the world. This leads us into the mechanics of what we call the occupied state.
It changes everything.
Because soul desire is rooted in deep nervous system coherence, your external behavior radically changes. There is no longer a need for chasing. There is no longer a frantic need to prove your worth to others, or even to yourself.
It rests in a simple, profound acknowledgement. You look at the desire, you look at the goal, and you simply think, yes, this is it. There is a quiet, unshakable certainty to it. You don't need to shout it from the rooftops to make it real.
You don't need to constantly talk about it at dinner parties to gather validation.
No, it is just a quiet, solid fact residing in your mind.
We can bring in the philosophy of Neville Goddard to illuminate this dynamic further. Goddard was a mystic who spoke extensively and profoundly on the mechanics of human imagination. He described this quiet recognition as the occupied state of consciousness.
To occupy a state means to view the physical world from that specific state, rather than viewing the state from a distance.
This represents the profound, necessary shift from a state of wanting to a state of being. Let's examine the language we use here, because words carry immense weight. Wanting inherently implies separation from the object.
It confirms distance.
If you say you want a glass of water, you are explicitly stating that you don't currently possess a glass of water. The act of wanting firmly affirms the distance between you and the goal.
Being, on the other hand, implies total unity with the object. When you occupy the state of consciousness of the wish fulfilled, you are no longer wanting, you are being. You merge entirely with the frequency of the desire. Goddard taught that you must assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled.
You step right into it.
You must step into the psychological state and wear it. Just as you would wear clothing. Think of it like a house you wish to purchase. You stop standing on the sidewalk. You stop looking at the house you want, feeling the distance between you and the front door.
You don't stay outside.
No. You use your imagination to walk inside. You start looking at the world from the window of the house you already own. You change your internal vantage point. You change the exact place you are standing in your own mind. This simple shift completely eliminates the heavy energy of lack and searching.
When you reside in the occupied state, reality eventually has to rearrange itself to reflect your new position. The universe is a mirror. It has no choice but to reflect the state you are occupying.
It is entirely bound by your state.
If you consistently occupy a state of unity, of having, and of quiet recognition, the external world will eventually solidify that internal state. It will become a physical, undeniable fact.
We are now moving from the deeply theoretical into the highly practical. We need to explore the internal process of moving from mere imagination to full integration. How do we actually transition a fleeting desire into a permanently occupied state?
It takes a certain kind of focus.
It does. There is a specific, highly repeatable psychological process for working with imagination and then successfully releasing it into the world.
The process follows a distinct three-step path. Let's break it down so it's entirely actionable for the listener. Step 1 is focus. Directed, sustained focus brings about emotional saturation.
You take the concept of your soul desire and you place your attention gently upon it.
You allow the feeling of it to completely fill your awareness.
Yeah.
You essentially marinate in the emotional truth of the outcome.
You don't force it. You don't strive or strain your mind. You just let the feeling of this is me permeate your physical and mental space. You stay with it until you reach a point of profound emotional saturation. The feeling becomes dense, becomes undeniably real to your internal senses, even if your physical eyes cannot see it yet.
That natural saturation leads us directly to step 2. Emotional saturation activates a specific state of consciousness. The prolonged, gentle exposure to the feeling actually shifts your internal baseline.
It moves you from the old state into the new one.
You slowly migrate from the old state of wanting into the new state of having. The new state becomes the active, dominant frequency within your psyche.
Then we reach step 3. This is, without a doubt, the most misunderstood part of the entire process. Step 3 is letting go. Letting go is what allows for true integration.
People struggle with this part so much.
They do. You must release the active, deliberate focus on the goal. You have to willingly take your hands off the steering wheel. You allow the deeper subconscious mind to take over the heavy lifting of the process.
I think we need a relatable analogy here. Because letting go often sounds like giving up to people who are used to hustling. It is really like ordering something online.
That is a great comparison.
Once you find the item, put it in your cart, and click purchase, you don't sit by the front door for 3 days stressing about whether the factory is actually making it. You don't panic about the delivery truck's route. You let it go because you know the transaction is complete. You transition from actively wanting the item to simply waiting for it to arrive.
That is a perfect modern translation of the concept. Letting go is not giving up. It is an act of supreme, quiet trust. You are trusting that the deeper layers of your consciousness will now connect the necessary dots in the physical world. You have planted the seed, you have watered it with emotional saturation. Now you must leave it alone in the dark, quiet soil of the mind to grow.
Digging it up every day to check the roots will only kill it.
Exactly. You reach a fascinating pivot point when you do this correctly. You wake up one normal Tuesday and you realize something strange has happened. You realize you no longer actively want the thing you were so focused on.
The burning, urgent desire is completely gone.
Yes. It has been replaced by something entirely different. It has been replaced by a quiet, unshakable knowing. You simply recognize the outcome as inevitable. You recognize it as already yours.
Neville Goddard had a perfect phrase for this exact subtle moment. He called it the seed accepted. It is the precise psychological threshold where a desire ceases to be a desire. It dies as a desire, and it is reborn permanently as a state of consciousness. The gestation period has officially begun.
When the seed is accepted, you feel a deep, washing sense of relief. The internal work is done. You don't need to visualize the goal anymore. You don't need to write down affirmations anymore. The state is fully occupied. The new reality feels as natural and mundane as your own name.
Well, let's extrapolate on how this transition permanently alters our interaction with reality. When desire successfully becomes a state of consciousness, your entire paradigm of living shifts. Creation is no longer about exhaustive goal pursuit. The heavy, linear, exhausting process of moving from point A to point B simply dissolves.
Creation transforms entirely into an act of self-expression.
You are no longer trying to acquire something from the outside world to add value to yourself. You are simply expressing the wholeness and value that already exists within you. Every subsequent action you take is a natural expression of the occupied state.
Your behavior organically aligns with the new identity without any forced discipline.
You walk differently. You speak with a different cadence. You make complex decisions from the endpoint of already having succeeded.
This represents the ultimate psychological freedom. You are completely liberated from the tyranny of lacking and wanting. You become a deliberate creator. You operate entirely from a platform of internal unity and peace. Reality becomes a blank canvas for your self-expression, rather than a locked storehouse of resources you are desperately trying to raid.
We're approaching the end of our exploration today. Let's bring this entire expansive conversation back to a central grounding point for you. This is the core takeaway we want you to hold on to long after this deep dive ends. The most important inquiry in your life is never what you want. It is never about the specific physical object, or the specific career title, or the specific relationship dynamics.
The essential question you must always ask yourself is this: from which exact state of consciousness are you wanting it? The quality and the outcome of any desire is completely determined by its originating source. It is never determined by its surface-level object.
You must become a vigilant, quiet observer of your own internal landscape. You must learn to trace your desires back to their deepest roots.
We want to leave you with a comforting, declarative realization. It is a truth you can rely on when things feel chaotic. When a desire truly arises from an identity-aligned state of consciousness, it doesn't violently pull you forward through life. It doesn't leave you chronically exhausted. It doesn't make you feel deeply inadequate while you pursue it.
Instead, it gently leads you home. It feels like a quiet return to yourself. It is a path of least resistance. It is guided entirely by resonance and deep internal knowing. You can absolutely trust the quiet desires. You can trust the ones that allow your nervous system to rest and expand.
We have a final, provocative thought for you to carry into your day. We want to challenge you to conduct a quiet, personal experiment. Sometime today or tomorrow, you will inevitably feel a strong pull towards something. It might be a major life decision regarding your career. It might be a simple impulse purchase online. It might be a sudden desire to change a long-standing habit.
When that moment arrives, we ask you to simply pause. Stop everything you are currently doing. Step away from the screen. Simply check your breathing. Direct your full attention to your physical body. Are you leaning forward with micro-tension in your shoulders? Are you breathing shallowly into your upper chest? Is there a subtle, frantic grasping in your energy?
Or are you breathing deeply into a physical space that feels like home? Is your chest open and relaxed? Is your nervous system calm and coherent? We suggest that your body already knows the true, unfiltered answer. It knows the exact source of the desire before your conscious mind has even finished formulating the question. Listen to the body. It will not lie to you.
Your somatic responses are the ultimate truth tellers in a noisy world. They completely bypass the clever rationalizations of the conditioned mind. They bypass the frantic panic of the lack-based ego. They connect directly to the coherence and wisdom of your deeper identity.
Use this highly accessible tool. It will fundamentally change the way you navigate every single decision in your life.
Thank you for joining us on this exploration of consciousness and desire. We hope this framework serves you well as you continue to map your own internal landscape.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed the conversation, please consider subscribing to the channel. For more in-depth and advanced content, you're welcome to join us on Patreon. We'll be back next week with the continuation of this topic.